again, everybody. This is Rusty, aka William Robinson, aka Dr. Robinson, and I am the Blues Doctor. Welcome to my new updated podcast, The Blues Doctor Recommends, and we're glad you're here. As I mentioned last week, our podcast is entering its second season, and in this season, we're going to continue to focus on the messy questions, the uncomfortable questions about healthcare that other pundits or podcasters they don't like to talk about. Many of the supposed experts and analysts that look at these issues do so through a biased lens that only allows them to see what they want to see and then only allows them to say what they want to say or whether to say nothing at all about a topic because it makes them uncomfortable. As the blues doctor, I'm going to take a different approach. I want to tackle those uncomfortable questions by looking at as much factual, objective information as I can before I make a decision about what I think. And I believe I'm in a unique position to answer those questions. I came from a working class background and was lucky enough to go to college and then to medical school. In the 40 years since then, I've been working as a physician, an administrator, an academician, and had the opportunity to observe the U.S. healthcare system up close at many levels. And before you make any assumptions about me, let me tell you, you may be surprised by some of the conclusions that I come to. I am a member of neither political party at this point, so my answers to those messy questions are likely to be unpredictable, particularly if you come from either a left or a right wing perspective. And music will continue to be an important part of the show. In my alternate life, I've been a blues fan and occasional performer. I've learned that blues is truly America's music and it has so much to say about life in this country. Another thing that won't change, whether we like it or not, is that we still need you to hit the thumbs up button, to subscribe, to share, to make comments, and even tell us when and where you're listening from. It really does make a difference. But with that, let's get on with it. Starting last week, we began to address one of the big questions I'd like to answer, which is who killed healthcare in the United States? That takes in an enormous amount of information. So we're breaking it down into smaller, more easily digestible parts. And we'll be talking about that over the next few weeks. In our first episode last week, we asked, how did we get here? Or what happened in the past to shape U.S. healthcare today? And I would encourage you to listen to that show because it does include some important background information that will help with the remaining shows in this series. Specifically today, we're going to try to answer the question, why can't we cure cancer? The evolution of cancer care in the US has, in many ways, mirrored healthcare overall. The treatment of cancer was pretty limited up until about 50 years ago. And since then, it's exploded in complexity and especially cost. The difference is that outcome hasn't changed as much as it has perhaps in the other specialties. If you look at heart disease or infectious disease, or even, or perhaps especially trauma care, we've made remarkable advancements and have even changed outcomes dramatically. The number of people who die from heart disease in the US has dropped substantially and continues to do so. Most infectious diseases have become controllable, if not curable. Even HIV or AIDS is far less lethal than it was 40 years ago when I started training. And trauma victims are much more likely to survive in the area of designated top level trauma centers around the country. Not so much with cancer. Sure, there's been some circumscribed successes, particularly in the children's cancers, but they make up a very small percentage of the total cancer burden in the US. In most adult cancers, the picture is much more mixed. In some types, we've seen almost no improvement in outcome in 50 years. It's been speculated that the reason we haven't cured cancers is something nefarious, maybe because either the government or industry or some other institution doesn't want us to. In these scenarios, those institutions get some benefit somehow from, quote, keeping people sick or keeping them dependent, perhaps, on those same institutions. Is that why we haven't cured cancer like we have some other diseases? Let's examine some of those reasons why and why not. We've treated cancer with the same basic modalities for the past 100 years or so, those being surgery, radiation therapy, and medical therapy, or the use of drugs of various types. And improvements in those areas have been responsible for alleviating suffering, if not curing cancer patients. We learned the concept of radical surgery for cancer in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Dr. William Halsted of Johns Hopkins Hospital pioneered the idea of radical versus simple excision of cancers. Doctors had been, prior to that, surgically removing cancerous tissues, but the disease commonly came right back, often in the exact same spot. Dr. Halsted recognized that visible cancerous tumors must somehow be more extensive than they appeared to be before our eyes. He didn't understand the concept of microscopic disease or lymph node drainage, but he did conclude that if a cancer was removed in a so called en bloc fashion, that is, in one piece with a significant margin, usually 2 to 3 centimeters of normal appearing tissue around it, the recurrence rate of the cancer dramatically decreased. In other words, instead of taking out just the visible tumor, if you also took out the surrounding normal appearing tissue all in one piece where you didn't have to cut it into sections to get it out of the body, the cancer was much less likely to come back. I know that seems perhaps intuitive now, but doctors didn't recognize that back then. Breast cancer patients were among the first to undergo this new approach to surgery, and the operations became known as a radical mastectomy. That technique was applied to other cancers with similar successes. In my own field of gynecology, Dr. Ernst Wertheim of Austria pioneered the radical hysterectomy in the first part of the 20th century and achieved the first cures of cancer in history. Radical surgical excision then became the standard for many types of cancer. The concept of using radiation therapy as a treatment for cancer also came of age in the early 20th century. The work of Pierre and particularly Maria Curie established radiation therapy as a viable treatment for multiple cancers, including skin cancers, head and neck cancers, anal cancers, and many others. Just as a side note, Mrs. Curie was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. She was the first woman to win 2 Nobel Prizes in 2 different divisions, medicine and physics. So she was really an interesting person. The methods of delivery of radiation therapy have changed, but the same basic concept remains. The cancerous tissue is vulnerable to high energy radiation. And if you can target a tumor closely enough, you can kill it without killing the rest of the patient's tissues. The idea of using a medicine to actually treat cancer rather than just relieve the symptoms came along relatively later. It was not until the 1950s that Dr. Sidney Farber proved that the use of drugs to kill cancer was feasible and coined the term chemotherapy. Since then, the use of chemotherapy has expanded dramatically, particularly, as I mentioned, in children's cancers and in so called blood cancers like leukemia and lymphoma. In fact, in the last 15 years, the number of chemo agents has grown almost exponentially, and now there are over 50 drugs for breast cancer alone that are approved by the FDA. So, why have all these improvements not resulted in more dramatic results? Pancreatic cancer, for example, not only still has an abysmal cure rate in the range of 5%, but the length of time till you die has only increased by a few months. Back to gynecology, despite several new agents being approved in the last 10 years, the survival of women with advanced cervical cancer has improved by only a few months. Overall, 90+% of those patients will still die of their disease. And there are many other cancers with similar stories. The real answer as to why cancer is so difficult to treat is that it's not just one disease. It's not just one organ type that develops the same disease in multiple individuals. It's that cancer is a bit of a misnomer in itself. It's actually a different disease in every individual. For example, if your child develops an ear infection, it's typically no different from an ear infection in thousands of other children. The cure is the same in each child, an oral antibiotic that kills the bacteria that cause the infection. Not so with cancer. And we've only really begun to understand the science at the molecular level or the level of the DNA. Each cancer is simply a variant on normal tissue with a few altered DNA molecules. And each individual has a different sequence or pattern of DNA. So each tumor is intrinsically different from every other tumor in that patient or in any other patients. The tumors from two different ovarian cancer patients will have entirely different DNA sequences, just as the two individuals do. So, using surgery or radiation or even traditional chemo drugs is akin to using a hydraulic jackhammer to hammer a nail into a piece of wood. You may succeed in getting the nail where you want it to go, but you'll damage or destroy the surroundings in the process because you can't narrow the tool's power to the target. The same applies to cancer. Every individual's cancer is a different disease with different DNA, and we've only just begun to understand that and develop the tools that target specific changes in DNA. Because of that, we can't expect to treat cancer like we do diseases that have definable causes, like bacteria for infections or high blood pressure for heart disease. If you treat those things like we do, you can usually treat the patient successfully. It was never going to be like that in cancer. And it's not because the evil drug companies are somehow preventing the development of curative medicines. It's beyond their ability to develop a cure for every single individual. I can guarantee you that if a drug company came up with a single drug that made breast cancer go away, they would put it in doctors' hands as fast as they could do it because they would make an immense amount of money. There's no conspiracy to keep cancer patients from getting well. The drug companies would make far more money if they had a drug that cured people because there would be so many more opportunities for the use of that drug. And in the end, that's why drug companies exist. That is to make money. They're neither good nor bad from a moral standpoint. There have certainly been individuals with evil intent within drug companies. One of the best examples, perhaps, being IG Farben, from which the modern company of Bayer Pharmaceuticals arose. Before World War II, IG Farben was the largest chemical and medicinal company in the world. Its board of directors at the time approved the use of slave labor from concentration camps to develop new drugs, including the drug Zyklon B for the Nazi government. Zyklon B was the primary agent used in the gas chambers to kill millions. And IG Farben put that right in their annual report. After the war, the Allies seized the assets of IG Farben and convicted a number of the involved individuals on a variety of charges, including homicide. Eventually, Farben was reorganized and split into smaller independent companies, including what became Bayer Pharmaceuticals in the US. What the Allies realized, and what I'm trying to explain here, is that legally licensed companies, in and of themselves, have no motives. They can't. Only humans can have motives. So the idea of blaming capitalism or the modern industrial system for the lack of progress in cancer care simply doesn't make sense. The bottom line and the answer to this question is we can't cure cancer because cancer is hard to cure. It's not just one disease, it's millions of different diseases, which makes it extremely difficult to understand and to treat. We're getting better. We have identified many new patterns in DNA that can serve as targets for synthetic drugs tailored specifically to them. In fact, we've made more progress in the last 5 years of my career than we did in the first 30. It will be fascinating to see what happens in the next 50 years. I can envision a time, in fact, when an individual with cancer is identified by a blood test when the cancer is still microscopic. The doctor collects some of the patient's blood, they isolate the cancer cells, check the DNA for patterns or targets, and then develop a new molecularly engineered drug to give back to the patient on the same day. And the cancer would be effectively treated. Wouldn't that be amazing? Some days I wish I was still working or just starting my career, perhaps better yet. But then I look over at like the guitar behind me or my golf clubs around the corner, and I just said, "Nah, I'll let somebody else do that." It's still Mardi Gras season in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, and as always, there's lots of cool music being made despite the cold temperatures, which has kept the crowds kind of low. We just don't know what to do around here when the temperature drops below 50 degrees or so. Most of us don't even really have winter coats, and the buildings are often very drafty, so most people just hunker down, as they say, until it warms back up. Here's a musical sample from some of the brave few who ventured out this week into the clubs.
Ain't nobody worried, you know it, baby. Ain't no smiling faces. Oh, come on now, come on, line to the races. This is when I need you, baby. Come on, help me now, help me now. I'll take you there. Oh, help me now, I'll take you there. Come on, let me take you there. Yeah. I'll take you there. Yeah. Let me take you there. I'll take you there. Mardi Gras, Mardi Gras, in the town where the cats are in the
And that's about all we have this week. We do have some new subscribers to the channel. Rob Garneau, and that's Garneau, joined us this week, as did Greta from NOLA, Oracle, and Tiro. Thanks, Rob and Greta, and I hope that you can participate actively with us. Anyway, as I usually say at this point, please watch next week's podcast, okay? See you later.